Welcome into the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball podcast on the KSR Podcast Network, presented as always by our good friends at Club Blue. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Miserable. I'm not enjoying myself. This is not a fun drive. I'm tired. I'm irritable. There are 90,000 police officers waiting to tag people driving the same drive as us back to Kentucky. Stephen, we're not in a good place right now.
Not in a good place. The place that we are in is in Tennessee, so definitely not in a good
place. That's why I'm so miserable right now. I just wasn't even putting two and two together right now. Like, why has life just seemingly, like, all of my energy, all of my will to live is gone?
Yeah.
And I was wondering what, like, it feels like there's just this black cloud hanging over me, and it's because I'm in this god-awful state after coming from a less god-awful but still pretty bad state to a good state in Kentucky.
I was getting ready to, Mississippi, I was doing pretty well. I was 4-0 in the state of Mississippi, so now I know what everybody's talking about when I was going to try to leave that up there. It didn't work. I know what everybody's talking about when they say going to Mississippi sucks. Because that sucked last night. That was very unenjoyable.
Yeah. So we talked like during our SEC preview shows and some of the things leading up to the season, how the SEC was such a juggernaut that there were going to be times that you travel down to Oxford in a midweek evening matchup and leave going, what the hell just happened? And it just had that vibe where you just never felt from the opening tip that Kentucky had a chance. And it had nothing to do with like, Ole Miss is just, way too good at this, or it just didn't feel like Kentucky had the juice, and it felt like Ole Miss had all of the juice. It had nothing to do with the crowd. I know we got a random
caught some strays on the KSR post-game show.
Yeah, caught a random stray on the post-game show. I am here to argue definitively about it, and Stephen, the reason why he didn't do like the in-depth crowd work that he usually does on these road trips is because the crowd stunk.
I'll tell you, I went up to the top row just to kind of take in the view from there, and I could have sat in any seat. There was like the row that I was in, 20 seats empty. Below me, nobody sitting in seats. It was a bad home environment. And somebody said something about, Kentucky just isn't the draw that it used to be. I don't care. You have a top 25 team in your hometown. If you're an Ole Miss fan, what the hell were you doing last night that you couldn't be there? That was one of the best performances of their season. Were you shocked? I have to ask you, wasn't that one of the weirdest games because of kind of how quiet it was? I've never been to a road game where Kentucky's played where it sounded like that.
In the post-game show, they use the example of the student section being loud and the music being loud. Those are givens. Like, you expect that in every single venue in the history of mankind, to, if the DJ cranks the music as loud as it goes.
Louder. And
the student section, more often than not, they're going to have the young, peppy juice. Like, it had nothing to, like, that's a must. That's a necessity for every single home venue in college basketball, college sports in general. I mean, they could be a rifle matchup and the student section is going to be popping. That you won't hear any positive. And if you think that environment, and nothing against you personally, but if you think that environment was truly good or like excellent or whatever, then you just need to go to more SEC road games. You need to go to more of these environments, because there are some really, really hostile. I mean, we've been to several of them. Auburn's one of the best. I kind of wish that we actually, considering how the season's going, I'm glad that we're not going to Auburn. But there are some venues that when you just walk into the building, you're like, oh boy, like, this is popping. Tennessee is a great example. Tennessee, the student section is going crazy, but everybody else in the crowd is also kind of feeding off of that energy. Ole Miss stunk. Like, their crowd, and so that's what made it so weird. Was it felt like the players were feeding off of energy that didn't exist. And I think a big part of it was like they're feeding off of one another. Like, you get one guy hitting a big shot, they're like, oh, well, I'm going to match you, next time down. And then he matches, and then it's like, oh, well, I'm going to match both of you guys. It was like they were feeding off one another, and that led whatever 70 people that were in the stands that got them fired up. So it was just not Kentucky's day in the absolute worst way. They get down by 23 at halftime, down 27 to start the second half. They claw back, get it to 11, and it's like there's a window of opportunity. It's 7 minutes left. If they could get it down to a 2-possession game at the final TV timeout, then, we got a ball game.
Yeah.
And then it just felt like Ole Miss kept coming back, hitting the big shots. The big moments just really fell in their favor, and just Kentucky, they tried. They made a valiant effort there at the end, but it just wasn't good enough when you lay an egg of that magnitude to get the third worst halftime deficit in this history of Kentucky basketball. I mean, it takes perfect basketball down the stretch while also assuming that your competition is just going to roll over and die. Kentucky played well, but it didn't mean that Ole Miss was just going to never make another shot the rest of the way to allow that miracle to happen, and that's how you end up with the second worst loss of the season. I think the worst loss overall of the season. Hey, more cops. Though I think it was the worst loss overall in the season, but by losing margin, Ole Miss is still technically worse, or Ohio State is still technically worse, but very, very ugly scene in Oxford.
And yeah, like you said, you got it down to 11. I thought that if you could have got it to under 10, that Ole Miss may have started to get a little tight. You could sort of see, I was down there on the floor, and you could sort of see them kind of get that way. The shot clock gets down to like 5, 4, 3, and step back 3 bottoms, and Ole Miss goes right back up by 14. And from that point on, they may have, I think Kentucky cut it to 13 one more time, but it was pretty
12.
much,
Okay. And it was every single time Kentucky hit a response, Ole Miss came right back, and it wasn't like it would be a quick. They scored in a couple seconds running the other way. They would milk the clock and then hit a dagger. There was that baseline jumper there at the end of the shot clock. They hit 2 at the very, very end of the shot clock, so they milk a whole minute off of the clock while also adding 5 points to the board. Again, that is why digging these impossible, insurmountable types of deficits. Yes, this team is capable of pulling off ridiculous comebacks. We've seen them do it, but it just takes a perfect storm to execute in that way, and
you can't keep falling behind.
It's not sustainable, like man. It's just not.
Especially, and we're obviously going to talk about this. You're missing your 2-point guards. If you can give that effort that you gave in the second half, why couldn't you not give it for the first 20 minutes? And there was a point in the game in the first half where it was slipping away. Got down by 13, maybe it was 15, and you let it balloon all the way up to 23. And if it's a 13-point game going into the half, you at least have a chance. You don't have to be perfect on the offensive end to overcome that deficit. And they could have overcame that deficit. Obviously, they took a 27-point lead down to 11. There are times in games where other teams are going on runs, and you have been talking about this all year. I think you gotta call timeout. You gotta reset things, if anything, to get a breather for guys that you gotta get back into the game. I don't believe there was much foul trouble in the first half. I know a few guys ended up with 3 fouls in the second half.
Doug Shows, 10 minutes before he called a single foul on either team.
Where was he at on Saturday? That's where we needed
Doug
Doug Shows on Saturday. But yeah, so that's where the game got away from you. Yeah, Ole Miss hit some shots. Morrell, what did he hit? 6 threes.
6 of 11.
6 of 11. He's like a 30-something% three-point shooter.
And he was questionable coming in. There was a chance that he was not going to play. He's been banged up and dealing with injuries all year. Go figure. The guy that's been limited and dealing with his own injury struggles.
I'm sure Louisville fans feel the same way about Lamont Butler, who we didn't know would play against Louisville. He comes out and goes 10 for 10 from the field, 6 of 6 from 3 and 33 points. And yes, you missed Lamont Butler. I mean, that to me is the story for the rest of the season. Is can you get a point guard Travis Perry hit a 3. It's just clear that he's not there yet. I have faith that Travis Perry will figure it out. He hustles, he gives everything he's got, but you need your 2 point guards that you got in the offseason, and they're not available right now. And I think that's just the whole thing. Now, with that said, the effort, and I went back and just watched while we were watching the game last night. Why would I do that?
Because you're a psychopath.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're our psychopath.
Glutton for punishment. But it was, man, there were some times just defensive breakdowns, and maybe Lamont Butler makes a difference there, but he can't be on the floor for 40 minutes. And there was one play where Carr and Jackson didn't communicate, and they both left the guy with the basketball, who was then almost like, oh, okay, I guess I'm wide open. Takes his time and fires a 3 and buries it. That's like miscommunication. Jackson went to go guard the big. Carr was like, I should be guarding the big, and then he leaves the guy wide open. There's that stuff, and then there's effort stuff. There's not diving on the floor for loose balls. There's shying away from contact. That stuff, I don't care who's on the floor. That should be, I don't know. I'm sure Mark Pope isn't in the huddle saying, hey guys, if you don't feel like diving for those balls, don't worry about it. It's okay. I mean, I'm sure he's like, get on the floor, but there is a lack of like urgency, especially early in games. And it's like, you can't keep falling down double digits. Kentucky, in the 3 of the last 4 games, Kentucky's gotten down by double digits, I think, or it's 2 of the last, whatever it is. You wrote an article about it. We talked about it on the way home from Vanderbilt. Same deal. You can't keep falling behind and trying to play catch up, and especially when your defense can't really get stops. It just makes
another cop.
You got to be perfect on the offensive end, and you had to score 100 last night to win. So, is there anything that you saw like from a hustle standpoint, I guess, that really stood out to you?
Yeah, and that's my biggest gripe with this team. When you are at a personnel disadvantage, when you're down 2 point guards, when your team kind of has to scrape by in the meantime of like, hey, we're banged up, we're limited, we just kind of gotta buy us some time until we get either or, preferably and, Lamont Butler and Kirk Risa back. And that's where the body language stuff, and when, you see Ole Miss hit a big shot and Kentucky respond back, not, execute, not make a shot, not, score at the basket, whatever, turn the ball over, whatever leads to a bucket the other way. And you just see kind of the pouting and the moping, and, you give up a 15-3 run to close out the first half and take that 23 lead into the tunnel, and you watch the guys go into the tunnel and they're just like, beating themselves up, and they're just in their own heads, and you're like, this team is just, it's such a fragile mental game where if you are not resilient and like, hey, who cares what just happened? Let's go kick butt in the second half. Like, let's come out with a statement. And they just kind of have, and you listen to the ESPN commentators, the sideline reporter Molly McGrath on the scene said, yeah, I was at the outside the tunnel at halftime, and I saw the players, and it's like, I just didn't see a lot of juice from them coming out in the second half. Then that's when you get down to it. And I asked Ortega about it after the game. I was like, what is the urgency? Like, why is it that it takes a 27-point deficit for it to click and say, oh shoot, we gotta go. Like, we only got 17 minutes left to win the game. Like, what are we doing? We gotta go fight. And I just don't know why it takes that truly absolute back against the wall desperation. And that's why I felt confident going down to Knoxville, because you had that edge, you had that chip on your shoulder going into that game when the outside noise told you that Kentucky had no chance to win that game. So they kind of had the fire, the chip on their shoulder, the spark that we saw. Hey, you're down 27 points, or getting your ass kicked. What can you do? That's when they go, all right, they can't believe it. They don't believe in us. Let's go prove them wrong. Mm-hmm. they had that mentality going into the Tennessee game, and then we saw them play, arguably their most complete 40-minute game of the season. I just don't know why it takes the very absolute last possible second for them to click in the urgency to set in. And Ortega, he just kind of said, we just gotta, whatever it is in those last 10 minutes, we gotta play all 40 minutes. We just gotta play a complete game. Like, he acknowledged that the urgency wasn't where it needed to be, and it's like, okay, then where does it come from? How do we get that? Why are we not stressing that with Mark? Mark Pope, that's been a regular talking point with him those last 10 minutes before the half. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on, but we keep seeing it game after game after game. Is it the, extended not calling timeouts, watching the game kind of slip away and not being one step ahead instead of one step behind, instead of, not being proactive, being reactive?
Yeah.
That's a bad habit that the staff has gotten in, where they just kind of let things, not throwing the wrench to start with, and like, hey, let's pressure 94 feet. Let's try to get up in them, force some turnovers. If they're going to try to force turnovers with us, make us uncomfortable, if they want to play that game, let's try to throw something different at them. And you just don't see that until the, Mark Pope said after the game, we threw just about every defensive, every different defense we have in the playbook at them at some point or another in this game. And it's like, well, yeah, but you waited until you were down 23 points to get there. Like, why don't we start with that and try to, constantly keep opposing teams on their heels, instead of letting them build a cushion and then trying to throw the wrench? It's just some little things here and there.
If teams just shot their average against Kentucky, I don't know if this game, because it's hard to say, because the game plan and everything kind of gets thrown out the window when you get down 27, or if you're up 27, right? Chris Beard is like, we're up 27. Do we really need to be, you kind of want to limit possessions at that point, so you don't really know. But the Arkansas game, for example, that's a team that does not shoot the three very well, and they made 13 of 25. And you had last night, what was their final tally from three? 12 of...
13 of 30.
13 of 30.
Which is, I think, in the pregame walk and talk, I think 13 of 30 was the exact number I said if Kentucky was going to win and could win by double digits in comfortable fashion.
Yeah.
13 of 30 was the number that we kind of had in our mind of what they needed to hit, and then Ole Miss does it and wins in comfortable fashion.
Another game where we went through it last night. Kentucky's being outshot from three. A team that kind of the whole offense is predicated on being able to run and gun, shoot, take a bunch of threes. They're being outshot, 100 to 68?
68, yep.
100 to 68. I think their opponents have made 36 of those 100. That's very easy. I love it when it's a round number like that. Very easy percentage.
What percentage is that?
That's 36%.
Nailed it.
Boom. While Kentucky has made 32 of 68. They're shooting unbelievably from three.
And I asked Pope about that. Hey, one game in SEC play, they have eclipsed the 33-point attempt mark. Mississippi State.
Okay.
One game they have eclipsed the 30 attempt mark. Why? Why is volume such a continued issue with this team when you enter the year saying we want to take 30 minimum, 35 preferably, and you are struggling to get 21 shots off, and they continue to shoot unbelievably efficiently. Like, they're getting good shots and they're making them, but for whatever reason, we're just I think since Lamont Butler has been out, Kentucky's averaging like 22 attempts from three in those 4 games or something like that. So on the year, just short of that 30 mark, but like 27, 28
so since Lamont's been out, they haven't been able to shoot as many.
It's
makes
already a struggle for this team that Mark Pope has been vocally frustrated about. They've gotten even worse in terms of shot volume since Lamont Butler's been out. So I don't know.
The dribble handoff was Ole Miss did a great job of defending that and not allowing it. Kentucky a lot of times was starting their offense about 8 feet behind the 3-point line. It does make it tough when you don't have a point guard as somebody who can drive and kick and, even just get the ball inside to Amari, or get the ball to Amari Williams so you can start an offense. And there's like, when you're trying to play those percentages out, was kind of what I was getting at. When you think, okay, this team shoots about this percentage from 3, this guy shoots this percentage from 3, and you're kind of playing the game out on a stat sheet, which college basketball games really aren't long enough. If a team hits above their average, the game's only 40 minutes. I mean, there's plenty of room for an outlier to happen in a game, which has happened the last 2 times. I don't know what Ole Miss has shot, or what their best game was, how many threes they hit in a game. I think that 30 is probably like the most that they had shot. I think they maybe had one game I looked where they shot 35. I'll have to recheck that. But
keep rambling. I'll go find it.
Yeah. So there is maybe the idea is they're gonna start missing. We'll take advantage of those misses. And that's where Kentucky can get into their offense a little bit quicker. But the problem is when they don't
Twice in SEC play, they've cleared the 30 mark. They did it at Mississippi State. Hey, something about Mississippi State, man.
Yeah.
They give up threes. In Texas A&M, they did it in back-to-back games. And then before that, the last time they hit the 30 mark is Southern Miss at home and Purdue and South Alabama. Those are the only times they've hit the 30 mark.
So, I think the game plan is let teams who aren't shooting the ball, let guys who don't shoot the ball that well, not teams, because Ole Miss isn't like a terrible 3-point shooting team, but let the guys who shoot in the 30% mark, let them pull. And like Mark Pope said in the post-game press conference, we've had some big guys, some of their bigs who step out and hit threes, and that's kind of killing them right now. So I wonder if the not calling timeouts, lack of panic, is like you just kind of let this play out because you think that they're not going to keep hitting. They don't normally do this. But then
I'm telling you, they are.
Yeah.
They are. Every game, they are. And you have to. I mean, Ole Miss. Kentucky is horrendous defensively, like horrendous. But we are no excuses whatsoever. But Ole Miss made some tough shots, man. And I just counted 4 games this year. Kentucky has eclipsed the 30 3-point attempt mark.
Dang.
That's not. I mean, that's not even like an issue. That is a train wreck from what your expectation when your identity all off season long going into the year. We're going to be a 30 attempt team. We're going to be a 30 attempt team. We're going to be a 35 attempt team. We're going to be run and gun. The ball's going to move. We're going to play a team oriented system that relies on second, third, fourth passes to get open looks. And for it to not even come close to a 30 attempt average, or 35 preferably, but 30, I mean, I'd be thrilled with 30 at this point. To only get it for 21 attempts.
Yeah, that's
10 of 21. That's just not good enough.
That's a third of the. Okay, so that's and then you talk about like taking threes that maybe are a little bit behind the 3-point line. You got a guy in your face. Kobe did take one of those in the first half. I think it was a 13-point game at the time. He pulls from deep. I don't mind it. Whatever. It's Kobe Bryant. I'm cool with it. It misses short. Ole Miss comes down one pass. Morrell pulls from 3. Boom, 16-point game. So, I mean, and it was a tough 3 for him, too.
6 of 9 games, they have hit the double-digit make mark. So, they are shooting hilariously efficient.
And one of those ways would be
them.
Ansley Almanor, who is shooting 17 of 28 since starting with the Mississippi State game. Who, what's the stat again with him and
Club
Trenoa? How many minutes was it total for those guys?
28, 15 for Ansley, 13 for Trent Noah, and not a single turnover. I mean, points, shots, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, nothing. Not even a turnover.
So, I mean, Ansley is like your hottest shooter right now.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's anybody. What is 17 of 20? Is like 60-something%? Like, there probably isn't somebody on the team that's shooting that high of percentage over these last however many games. Again, starting with Mississippi State. and that's decent volume. 28, that's decent volume for just those few games. I mean, how do you not get him a one look?
And on the flip side of that, to play devil's advocate, if you're not getting him looks and he's not taking shots, pretty well-known fact that he's a poor defender.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Not a great athlete, doesn't rebound the ball extremely well, puts himself in solid position to rebound, but not, the most physically imposing guy to go get one. If he's a non-factor, if Trent Noah isn't giving you anything, that's 28 minutes that, Colin Chandler has struggled hilariously on the offense. Not hilarious, that's an unfair phrase, but Colin has been a non-factor offensively, but has been tremendous defensively in the last couple of games. And you go from 15 minutes for him the game before to 3 in a game where they looked it up. Ole Miss is by far the worst defensive performance of the season, just in terms of points per possession, points per average, points per 100 possessions. Defensively, by far the worst. Florida and Arkansas were the only two that have come, pretty close to that. But if you're going to, Alabama's up there as well. But if you're going to struggle the way they are defensively, and the guys who are, especially Ansley, where he's a boom or bust kind of guy, he can come in and knock down 4 threes and kind of change the trajectory of a game. But if he's not taking and not making any, what is he giving you, and why are you not, if you're not going to get any offense from him, why are you not sacrificing that to get some defense in there when Kentucky desperately needed it last night?
Yeah, there's definitely an argument for that, and there's watching that game last night from where I was sitting. I felt like in the second half there was just a raised level of intensity on the defensive end. And as they started to climb back, they saw the bench get into it a little bit more, which in the first half, coaches had to, come on guys, let's go, get up for your teammates. I haven't seen them have to do that much this year. I don't know if there was a little bit of carryover from the Arkansas loss. I know we talked about how the players didn't really feel that same devastated feeling that maybe the fans felt because of the circumstances. But I didn't know if maybe there was some type of, a hangover from a emotional, major game. It was, even if you didn't have those same feelings because you played at BYU last year, or you played at Oklahoma State, or you played at wherever. You were in that building. If you were in that building, you felt it. You felt what that game meant. I think Mark Pope talked about it after the game. These guys are now, they see what this is. You go into a really quiet road game, just very different feel and everything, and there was a lack of intensity. I thought we talked about Colin Chandler in the minutes he got the last couple games because of his defense, and he played in 1 minute? 3 minutes. And I get it, he comes in the game, and then you get kind of one of the not weird, but that 10-second violation came with hardly much pressure. They just picked up on full court, and without a point guard, you just saw how that just really messed up everything for Kentucky's offense. Just getting the ball across half court sometimes looked like it was taking a lot of effort. And Jackson was trying to bring it across. We're doing these lob passes just to try to get the ball to Amari and throwing the ball away. It's really soft passes. Travis had one too that was just, you're telegraphing it. That stuff ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work in the SEC with these athletes. You can't. There were several passes that got tipped and several others that could have been taken the other way. The other thing is, zone is not a cure-all. And it's just saying zone. Just saying zone. There's several different.
It's a nice buzzword.
Yeah, there's several versions of zone. There's the morphing zone that Pope pulled out against Gonzaga. I know he said he went through the whole bag of defensive tricks that they could have maybe pulled out. I don't know if there's the thought that, we can't rebound against the zone. Well, when they're making every shot, you're not really getting rebounds anymore. So I think you got to scheme up something. Because if you're going to have, you can't really have some guys in the game because of what they do, what they're. I'm struggling right now. I hate bashing or being even critical of these players because I really do like them. I really like these players. They seem to have embraced the Kentucky, they've all the stuff that we've talked about all year. I do wonder, are they too nice? Is that a critique is that fair? Do we need, DeMarcus Cousins punched his high school coach? Do we need somebody who's just a little bit more, nasty was the word that was used earlier this year by Andrew Carr. Do you need somebody? Do you need a couple guys?
Dogs.
Is that what people mean when they say that?
Yeah.
Okay. And the dogs then.
Yeah, and I think there's a want to with a lot of it, and it's not even necessarily this guy's gonna get down in the mud. He's gonna get, it's not even necessarily that, but there's also, Colin Chandler defensively, I would describe it not as a dog. Bless his heart. I don't think Colin Chandler as a mean-spirited bone in his body, but you get what I'm saying. There is a want to when Colin Chandler gets on the floor defensively. What he did against Tennessee, stepping up in that big environment on that big stage in a really big head-to-head matchup for him, he had that want to, that contagious energy and just the fight and the hey, I'm gonna dig my heels in and you're gonna have to push me off my spot. You don't see that with a lot of guys. So I don't know. I think that was what made the Arkansas loss in the aftermath so frustrating. Was you thought, okay, yes, I know that you had no affiliation with John Calipari and his time at Kentucky. I know that the new era of Kentucky basketball isn't the old one, and the Anzi Almanors and the Andrew Carrs and the Jackson Robinsons, the guys that come in with a new brand of Kentucky basketball, they didn't have the emotional tie to that rivalry and the homecoming and the drama and the noise behind it. And then when you talk to the guys on Monday, there was some of the quotes after the game on Saturday were very just kind of yeah, they wanted this a little bit more than we did. This meant something to them, and it was just another game for us, which
don't love that.
You don't love that, but if there's a positive to that approach, it's okay, then there isn't going to be an emotional hangover afterward. There isn't going to be the Super Bowl hangover.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to go down. And then you felt from the opening tip that these guys they don't have the juice that led to these guys clearly have the Super Bowl hangover. And it's well, wait, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say that the game didn't mean anything to you and then have it mean something a little more to the point where you can't bring the energy and you can't bring the juice 3 days later. They let one loss turn into two, but the way they kind of approached it said, well, that loss didn't mean as much to us as it did the win meant to them in that locker room. Which, yeah, that's the frustrating part. I was willing to accept the loss with a lack of hey, this is your all's drama and your all's noise, not ours. I was willing to accept that if it meant that on Tuesday they were going to respond, and they played even worse. They had a worse energy. They played like they didn't have the want to, that we complained about, hey, why is it that the Arkansas bench is playing for their coach harder than the Kentucky bench is playing harder for theirs? Why is that? You thought that you would get that you were missing, and they were somehow worse, especially in the first 23 minutes.
And you saw Carter Knox when he hit a step back three, he's talking trash, he's getting up in their faces. Those guys played with, I've watched Arkansas all year. I know they live rent free in my head, whatever. Yeah, sure, they do this year. They do. I'm watching a bunch of guys who I pulled for last year, and I'm watching recruits that I was excited for. to an extent, some of them. But you know what I mean. Of course. This year, I'll admit it. It's not true for everybody who works at KSR, but it is for me. I'm paying attention to everything Arkansas does. I haven't seen them play with that energy. I haven't seen them do that. And they were on the way. I mean, Billy Richmond talking trash. You had like dudes dunking on us and flex. I mean, Ortega away.
Billy Richmond was getting in fights with people in the stands.
Yeah.
Like he was talking trash. John Calipari had to
Do you
end
remember
his...
John Wall doing that to Mississippi State fans?
Yeah.
Do you remember like DeMarcus Cousins doing the call me and those? I mean, you kind of need that. You definitely need it when you're on the road in some hostile environments. And like Kerr Kriisa was that guy. And I've missed him ever since Gonzaga. And I know he hadn't shot the ball up to that point as
It
well
was
as
going to come.
It was coming, man. And it just sucks. Like I'm gonna live out the rest of the season wondering what could have been with watching Kerr, and maybe not even just from the standpoint of what he produces in terms of points and assists, but just what he produces in terms of excitement and energy, and that having that kind of like FU attitude.
That MFer, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what this team needs. I think you got a guy like Ortega Oweh, and Brandon Garrison doesn't seem like somebody who takes a whole lot of stuff from
But he almost seems like goofy, immature, like
It is.
I don't,
Yeah,
kind of like in the same way that Z had, the immature, like, I don't have, I'm not coming.
Like goofy technicals? Did he get
Yeah,
like, hang on a rim
but Z would just like talk trash to you and just be like, like as a 15-year-old kid. I kind of get that same like golden retriever-y vibe from Brandon Garrison instead of like a pit bull. Are you dead?
This one might be dead. So if you just want to like throw this one over here whenever I'm talking. But yeah, I mean like that is what I've kind of felt like that this team's kind of lacking. And man, what I would give to have Kerr Kriisa back. Is it you asked Pope after the game. I feel like with every update I get a little bit more concerned that it's just not going to happen. But Lamont probably more likely, right?
Yeah, and it's funny. I agree more with the ESPN injury update that Jimmy Dykes and Carl Ravitch gave last night, based on just conversations that I've had, people around the program and people close to Lamont, that Lamont was gingerly going through shoot around yesterday, had a big shoulder brace on, and the internal expectation per Ravitch and Jimmy Dykes was that is more if not when he was, or when not if he was going to return, and that they would be shocked if this was something that lasted the whole year, that the team is expecting him to play again. I have heard that part. I have personally heard that he's kind of champing at the bit, wanting to get back, wanting to do whatever it takes to do there. There's just kind of a balance of setbacks are very real for what he's dealing with his shoulder. They're tricky. It's easy to kind of go take one hard hit, one hard fall, one hard whatever, and kind of go back to square one with it. So it's one of those, they're trying to milk it as much as they can to get him back to full strength. It's similar to Andrew Carr and his back, where Andrew could have by definition played through that injury, but had he done that, the setback potential was so unbelievably high where you're not going to risk him, playing for 3 hard minutes for them to respond and have him miss the rest of the year. It's just not worth it. Get him back to 100%, even if you have to take the immediate lumps in the short term. That is the vibe with Lamont Butler. Yes, it's tricky. Yes, there is a chance that if he suffers another setback, he's going to have surgery and be out for the rest of the season. That's a nightmare scenario. That's what they're trying to avoid. But there is he's close. If it were an NCAA tournament game, he would probably play. And yes, we are kind of in that, but like not enough right now to where it's worth the risk of having him go in and potentially lose him for the season. It's just not worth it. See if you can hold off as long as you possibly can. He wants to play. This is his last year of eligibility. This kid is a warrior. This is a kid that hit a game-winning shot in the Final Four to go to the championship game. Like, this is not a kid that, if I see another moron on Twitter on somebody saying, take his NIL money until he plays again. You're stupid. Stop saying dumb things, Twitter. Like, I'm so tired of the people that would never say these things in real life tagging these kids on Twitter and saying, you're soft, you're this.
Is that helpful?
Stop being lame, man.
Like,
stop. Lamont Butler is the epitome of warrior dog, as we were talking about before.
Yeah.
He is your point of attack guy at the top of the key, the tone setter, I want it more than you. That's why you bring in a Lamont Butler. So to even insinuate, to even hint at a possibility of him being soft or he's just cashing in the NIL checks because is his life. F off. Like that. Don't be ridiculous. Don't say dumb things in the heat of the moment that are gonna make you look like a jerk after the fact.
It's not helpful. It's not helpful for recruiting. It's not helpful for somebody else. Speaking of dumb things on Twitter, somebody called Amari Williams after the game,
his triple-double game.
They called him soft. Kentucky. I mean, come on. He hit triple. It's the 4th triple-double ever, which is something that Matt said on the post-game show, makes this game actually kind of memorable. And it's crazy. Half of Kentucky's triple-doubles have come at Ole Miss, which is wild. And 3 of them have come in the last, 8 years?
Isaiah Briscoe, De'Aaron Fox, and who is the 4th?
Who is the 4th? Do you know it?
Chris Mills.
Chris Mills. That's right. He said that. That's right. So, yeah, I mean, that's it's good company for Amari Williams. But the other thing about Twitter, and I get it. I mean, I'm hurting. This sucks, and I want this stuff fixed. I want to win right away. I wanted this team. I went to the Duke game not really knowing what to expect, but I was like, I want Kentucky to win, and I would be pissed off if they don't. But you also have to look at what this is, right? I mean, we've talked for 40 minutes. We've pointed out all of the flaws and all the things that they did wrong and things that maybe Mark Pope and the staff should be doing. We can say this stuff in hindsight. I'm sure it's stuff that they're looking at too. But at the end of the day, I mean, you could have the greatest coach of all time on that sideline, and I just don't know what they would do differently. I don't know what Pat Riley would do. I mean, I don't know what Rick Pitino would do, or Bruce Pearl if your starting point guard and your backup point guard got hurt. And
Pat Riley and Bruce Pearl in the same sentence is funny.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to think of but you can have Adolph Rupp. I don't care. Name a coach. Name a coach with a bunch of wins and they're clearly successful Hall of Famers. John Calipari. Whoever is on that sideline in this current situation has their work cut out for them. If you took, Pat Kelsey, another good coach. If you took Chucky Hepburn off Louisville, how good are they? Terrible. If you and I used this last night, but if you took Marquise Teague off that 2011-12 team and you got a run point with Deron Lamb and Jared Polson, you gonna win a national title? Maybe you have Anthony Davis.
Are you doubting Jared Polson?
I love Jared Polson. I never would doubt him. He had a great game against Maryland the following year.
One time.
Yes, the Jared Polson game. We'll never forget it. But it's just a fact. It's not an excuse. This is just what it is. Coach Pope isn't making these excuses, by the way. He answered your question with, we gotta win with the players we got. That's the job. And that's true. And there are things I think that they could adjust and do better. But at the end of the day, every win without both point guards, and people have pointed out, well, we won Gonzaga without Lamont Butler and Kerr Kriisa for the final, 10 minutes in overtime or something. And maybe Gonzaga, I don't know. I mean, are they? So I understand they beat Tennessee the same way. Tennessee missed 34 three-point attempts. That's going to be helpful when you don't have a point guard and you need to get out and transition off a miss, right? Then you don't really need a point guard because you can just go, as Cal would say. So am I crazy for saying that, like, without these two guys, every game, including South Carolina, is going to be challenging, and they have to win on Saturday. Have to. But it is by far not a guarantee. Because you have guys who have played, yes, they've all played basketball for several years. None of them played point guard. Amari Williams was running point against Tennessee. Isn't that insane? He brought the ball up the floor several times. He went coast to coast one time and got a foul, almost finished it, almost had an and one. This coaching staff has their work cut out for them. If you are going to have any of these big, grandiose takes about is Mark Pope the guy in game 22 or 23, or 22 after game 22, that's just, you know how I am. You know how I am, Jack. Like,
yeah. And
I will say this about the past few years. Calipari's was unlucky with he had bad injury luck. Kentucky as a program has had bad injury luck the last several years. These aren't excuses. This is just what happens. And the teams who get 1 seeds and the teams who win championships, as I went through every single one, the only team who won the title with a guy who was out for a majority of the season was a 2017 North Carolina team since 2009, as far as back as I went. I could keep going, but I was kind of proving I don't need to keep going. I know what the pattern is here. There's been one team that was able to do it with a starter who was out for a majority of the season. And you had Kansas, who had a guy who was missed a few games. He came back, and then they won it all in 22. You have to have good injury luck to reach your ceiling. Duh! The best players have to play. Isn't that insane? Oh my gosh, I can't believe we didn't win when, one of our best players was out and we didn't have a point guard. I know that it's Kentucky, and you gotta, the pressure is going to be on Mark Pope. They got to figure it out because clearly there ain't going to be much patience.
Yeah, I think the only grandiose take you can have with this situation, losing 4 of the last 5, losing 2 in a row, is that the honeymoon is over. That's totally fair to say, kind of one of the bigger talking points that people have been throwing out there is that you don't become the Kentucky head coach until you face your first real adversity. Mark Pope is experiencing that right now because, again, as we're seeing on Twitter and message boards and in this chat right now, I'm sure, Mark Pope isn't the guy. You guys, there are a lot of told you so people that like to come out of the woodworks, a very vocal minority that were the first to come at Pope's throat after the hire, say Mitch Barnhart is an idiot, I can't believe that he would make such a hire, got quiet whenever the pep rally and the off-season momentum continued, kind of stayed quiet, said that we'll see what happens when the season starts. Pope stacks some early big wins, kind of stays hidden in the shadows, and then as soon as the first couple of big hits come, the same people that were saying that Pope would never make it here and it was an absolute disaster hire were the first people to be the loudest in these types of moments. So ignore the vocal minority that are rooting for Pope's failure. There are people that are online, and you know who you are, that are celebrating the losses more than the wins, hoping for an I told you so moment. If you are doing that, then you are not a real Kentucky fan. You would rather be right in the moment about Pope not being the guy than celebrating the success of this program. If that's the case, you need a reality check. You need to touch some grass and take this experience for what it is. Mark Pope was hired first week of April, after the Final Four, a month removed from when teams were already knocked out, from post-conference tournament season, they were already done.
Guys were already transfer portaling.
Guys had already been in the portal. They were already signing elsewhere. That first, maybe even 2 waves of portal guys had already come and gone. Pope gets the best of the rest and puts together a top 20 roster from top to bottom that at the time was unbelievably deep and unbelievably talented in their own kind of, specialty ways. It's Kobe as a shooter, Lamont as an on-ball defender, Ortega as the downhill athlete.
This is such a good point that you're making, because it does actually show each guy has their own special skill set. So some guys' skill sets are, I'm really good at this, I'm really good at this, this person's really good at this. But then when you lose both your main ball handlers, that was their specialty. That's what they were going to bring, that other guys didn't have. And now you're asking guys who didn't have that skill set to suddenly find that skill set when they've been playing basketball for 3, 4, 5 years and they never had that skill set, or it's never been the thing that they're the best at. So yeah, that's a great point. That's how they assembled this team. Okay, well, if we lose Lamont, we have Kerr. We have Kerr Creason, another good ball handler, decent. He's 40% shooter, I think, either last year or 2 years ago. We got that guy. Well, what happened? Well, now both of them went out, and that is just bad luck.
In the reality and the hope is after this year, the reason why we kind of said, hey, don't just pencil in Final Four or bust. You are going to root for that, but also while understanding, look at these potholes. This is embarrassing.
Come on, Tennessee. Get it together.
Tennessee, just pathetic. The idea is this first year, given the circumstances, constructing a roster with the specialty guys that they have as quickly as they did, that the floor may be pretty darn high, as we saw with Duke, as we saw with Gonzaga, as we saw with some of these higher profile wins. They got the stuff to go win some big games because they're old, they're experienced, they can handle bigger high pressure moments. They have been excellent in that situation. But the ceiling is pretty low for high major SEC basketball standards that maybe limit that Final Four ceiling and kind of put you at a, hey, second weekend is the ideal scenario for this team. So the hope is you're going to find similar fits now with better talent, with a full recruiting cycle. You hope that Jasper Johnson can be, a better athlete, more talented version of a Jackson Robinson. I'm not saying it's an exact comparison, but I'm saying you kind of want the idea of a Caden Lewis over 2 years to be kind of a, that two-way incredible college player that, a Lamont Butler can be. Just go down the list. Malachi Moreno, kind of that same, McDonald's All-American trajectory of a Brandon Garrison. You want the upside and the high-end talent to be there, while also getting your pick of the litter with the what they've been able to. You have the data now to say, hey, we took Lamont Butler as one of the best portal point guards and turned him into he had his best season in college basketball. Mm-hmm. Use that example for every play. Jackson Robinson had a more well-rounded season. Amari Williams emerging as a legitimate draft pick. If he can be the versatile, you are going to get your pick of the litter now, the best of the best in the portal, with a full beginning of March window on, plus the high school recruiting, plus the retention and the growth and development of a Colin Chandler and a Travis Perry and a Trent Noah and the guys that you want to retain with your program. See if you can get an Ortega back. Bank on a Brandon Garrison back and run it back with a bigger, better version of what this team is going to be. That's the long-term play, and that's what makes the short-sighted Mark Pope ain't the guy takes dumb.
Yeah.
This was always going to be a long-term process. It's kind of funny, Stephen, see if you agree with me. He kind of has what worked against John Calipari in his total 15-year career at Kentucky. He kind of has that going against him in his first year in Lexington as the head coach, where he stacked some early wins, starts 4-0 against top 15 competition, starts 6-1 overall against with all these wins, matching a rate that only Adolph Rupp has touched, second to Adolph Rupp. He hits these highs that were like, this is the coach of the year. I can't believe we stumbled upon the next Adolph Rupp. I could just go down the list, as we were talking about with the best coaches of all time, whatever. We stumbled upon our guy, and he has hit this 4 losses and 5 tries, where it's like, oh well, that was all fool's gold. They have imposter syndrome. The first version of this team, they were fraudulent. Now we're seeing the real version of Kentucky. It's like, well, no, yeah, luck played. They hit some big shots and closed games extremely well late in some games, and then the injury bug got them, and then they didn't hit the same shots down the stretch. It is kind of like John Calipari's 15-year career smushed together in one season of Mark Pope. But we also have the messaging, and the fans are still hanging on to every word that Mark Pope is saying, not in the same way that they kind of fell upon deaf ears with John Calipari there at the very end. So there's still the freshness with Mark Pope, while still having kind of some of the similar big picture success and failures, and it's kind of a similar spot over the course of his career. It's tough, but that doesn't mean that we just wake up tomorrow and say, Mark Pope's not the guy, fire him. We should have gotten this guy. Why didn't we go hire this guy? Fire Mark Pope so we can go get that guy this next cycle. Just breathe.
Isn't there a reason to be optimistic when you look at some of the numbers that Mark Pope and the staff put together this team? Mark Pope gets hired, has to find a staff, has to find players, does that, puts together a bunch of guys who have never played together before, has to implement an offense in a matter of months, with he has one guy in Jackson returning with him, and he has the number 2 offense in KenPom.
I believe right now, since January 1st, so the start of SEC play, Kentucky has the number 1 offense in college basketball and the number 218 defense in college basketball. Yeah,
so I think that and I know that the defense thing really stands out, but we've talked about not having the athletes to play defense. And so when you take some of these, you're taking all these pieces and you're able to throw together the offense. I feel like once you have a few more athletes, then the defense starts to get a little bit better, and you can see that number improve over the next couple seasons. And I think that is what we're not used to. John Calipari, the thing that he did great is you went into every season thinking about going to a Final Four, even when things weren't that good. We went into the COVID season, and Terrence Clark, there goes another injury. If Terrence Clark doesn't get hurt, they don't go 9-16. But if we went into every year with Cal thinking that Final Four is the goal, and this first year, for me, it wasn't. I would have been surprised, and I think after you had all those wins, and you had national media saying, and I think you even had Buzz. I'm sorry. What's his
Williams?
Buzz. Thank you. Lightyear. I think that was. I can remember. But you had Buzz Williams.
Just say vest guy.
Yes. You had him saying Kentucky is a national championship contender. That gets everybody's hopes up. And again, that was maybe with Lamont. Maybe they are, and maybe I'm the one that's undervaluing what this team is. But I just feel like this isn't exactly Rick Pitino taking over in his first year, going 14-14 with a bunch of guys who decided to stick around while Kentucky was on probation. It's not the exact same, but it's a lot closer to that than Calipari brings in a bunch of studs, and they immediately go, what did they go that year? They lost, 3 games? 2 games? 2 and then the tournament?
Yeah.
So 35-3, I think they were. So
yeah, it was 10. Devin Downey, South Carolina, Tennessee, and West Virginia. Yeah.
So, and you know what else happened that year, and what happened in 2011, and what happened in 2012?
Healthy.
Everyone was healthy. John Wall missed one game because he was suspended for the Morehead State game, and I don't think anybody of significance missed a single game except for Enes Kanter, I guess, if you want to count that in 2011. But and then 2012, same deal. I think you might have missed Terrence Jones for something, and then there was, but it was not like no one missed like 4 or 5 games. So that stuff is big.
And they all played 34 minutes a game.
And that's the other thing, and that's okay. So I know we got to wrap this up soon, but like Amari did have a triple double in about 25 minutes. Is there a reason why okay, here's the beginning of the game. I think it was Jackson Robinson and Kobe Bryant played the opening 3 or 4 minutes. Right before the media timeout, they get taken out. I thought, okay, they're going to get a breather. It's like 16-12, next dead ball. They get a timeout, they'll come back in. Didn't happen. They sat out to like the next media timeout. Is there a reason guys can't play 36, 38 minutes right now?
And we talked about it. It is because the offense is more complex and it involves more cutting, although we're not seeing enough cutting and guys not cutting hard enough, and that's where the urgency and the effort and all that stuff comes in. But what it's supposed to be is they're racking up more steps, more miles over the course of a game because of how much more cutting and the pace that they play with. And that's why
they were able to wear teams down, I guess. And that's what we actually talked to Kerr about that early in the season, about you get that second group comes in and then the other team's kind of like breathing heavy. This Cooper Flag's kind of breathing heavy, and you could use these substitutions. Somebody said, are you subbing too frequently? Should you let guys play 4 or 5 minutes straight instead of? But I don't know. I mean, I like that strategy earlier in the season when you had the depth that you just don't have right now.
And that's the data. And the Pope and his staff were kind of getting bullied a little bit online about how like spreadsheets don't win basketball games. Sometimes you got to bring dudes in that just have the it factor, and guys that like, hey, we got to lean on you to go play 6 minutes straight without coming out, instead of just sticking to like, hey, our rotation is at the 16:42 mark is when Kobe or whatever any given night, that's going to be when Trent Noah and Travis Perry come in on the first team, first sub, and then after that, the next wave is going to be at 12 minutes and 54 seconds, whatever the set time. He kind of Pope said earlier in the year that like Brandon Garrison was so much better in short little tiny windows, while Amari, you could kind of have him anchor things down, but if you could get Brandon in these kind of short bursts, they saw that his productivity and efficiency went, through the roof. So I think that they are obsessing over that data where he is better in these windows instead of just kind of letting instinct and like that. I think that it was a really perfect example of Jason Hart when Trent Noah, was it the Tennessee game? I think, yeah, Trent Noah at the Tennessee game hitting that big 3 at the top of the key, his Mountain Mamba moment, where the rotation had already gone past for him to sub out. And the spreadsheet guys at the end of the bench said, Trent, it's your time. Jason Hart said, no. Ride the wave just an extra 2 seconds. I think we're seeing something. There's something special here working, and that's immediately after that Trent hit his big 3, and the rest is history for that game. But there is something to be said about like, hey, sometimes we just gotta ride the instinct wave and say, hey, I need Jackson to play 10 minutes straight to will us to victory. I need Amari Williams, if he is bulldozing Big Z down low, we got to kind of keep working that physicality and go, not just because the book tells you, it's time for Amari to get his 3 minutes and 12 seconds of rest. Like, we got to sometimes have some flexibility with it. But that's kind of the give and take of having the analytic nerds that are the at the forefront of college basketball. We wanted this. We signed up for the offensive gurus and the guys that could, break down the game better than anybody else. It's there's kind of a give and take with it that's very, very tricky, very difficult.
Yep, and I'm still riding with this coaching staff, man. I really believe in them. I believe in Mark Pope because of his humility. I do not believe he is going to be someone who will be stubborn in any of this stuff. He is going to take he's taking responsibility. He said this is not moral victories. We don't do that here. And he's not blaming injuries. He's taking on the responsibility of his position. It's why he's paid millions of dollars to do it. He understands that. I do believe he understands the assignment and that they're going to get it done. I truly believe that. I could be wrong. We could find, and then you know what? If we're 3 years in and we're dealing with the same stuff, then Mark Pope may not be the coach in year 4. But there may not be a year 4. But for right now, if you're going to throw in the towel on this, I understand, trust me, I understand, that losing, as Mark Pope said, losing is the worst. It's the worst. I hate it. I hate losing more than I enjoy the winning. And
I can vouch for that. I can say with 1,000% certainty that is true.
Yeah, and I think this is as well as I've handled a loss in a while. Maybe since Alabama lost too, I was okay with that one. I'm not okay with it, but you know what I mean. I get it. And I get that a lot of the stuff people are saying about, and they want to be right, and it's kind of like this extra, if they lose, well, at least I get to be right, and I'll go on social media and let everybody know about it. I know you people are fans. And it's not that you can't be critical. Be critical. But I don't think we really need, when we're trying to build a program and recruit players, and I don't think we need the extra overly negative stuff right now. I mean, I was negative about Cal, but I was always like, I wanted him to prove me wrong every game, and I just don't think that. I think patience is something that Kentucky fans, we don't have. I mean, that's Kentucky. We're now going to have 10 years. It's going to be 10 years without a 1 seed. That is by far the longest stretch before was 6 years. Calipari got us to 9 straight years. And I kind of knew going in this was going to be 10. And this will probably be 10 years straight without a Final Four, which we've gone a little bit longer than that. Patience is not what we do best, but I think we're going to have to be patient. But I see it. I see the blueprint for what this is going to turn into. And I am so excited. For the rest of the season, I'm still excited. These last 9 games, I want to see what this coaching staff can do, and I want to see the players respond. I still think this team has a good run in them. I think we have several more celebrations. I think there's several more celebrations to be had, especially if you can get your point guard back.
I do think there is kind of a beauty in the vulnerability of, like, the situation is what it is. You're down 2 point guards. Kirk Risa, for my money, probably not going to play again this season. Lamont, I expect him to play, but his situation being more tricky than they would certainly hope. But there is kind of just this, like, we're a bad defensive team. We have elite offensive potential if they have the urgency and they have the want to. They can go out and still outscore anybody. They can go and have an absolutely ridiculous day on any given night. They could go to Alabama and beat them in Tuscaloosa. They could host number 1 Auburn and knock off Auburn inside Rupp Arena. They could go down to Nashville and rattle off. Hopefully we're playing Thursday instead of Wednesday. Wednesday would be a little bit tougher, but Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they could rattle off 4 consecutive wins, and we could be watching the confetti fall on us down in Bridgestone Arena. This team has potential. It's just about finding it, and just there's kind of this, like, freedom and this carefree feeling of, like, hey, we know that the situation is really tough. Why not? Like, kind of that same vibe that we had going into Tennessee. Why not? Nobody, we stunk. We've lost 4 out of 5. Things are looking dire. We have some very legitimate, fundamental, foundational, structural issues right now. go backs against the wall, play carefree basketball, go win some basketball games. Like this team has,
like you did in the second half.
this team has some of that. It's just about unlocking it for 40 minutes and coming in the way they approach the Tennessee game, not once you're down by 27 points. That's my biggest frustration. I truly believe that they're capable of winning games at an elite level and even still making a run. I don't think we're going to a Final Four, but I still think like an Elite Eight, getting to that second weekend, having a good time. I have never with my own two eyes seen an in-person Sweet 16. That's still very much on the table. There's still so much to play for with this season that just don't kind of ride the wave and know that we're kind of accepting a new reality with this new team, that you just kind of have to take a step back, know that the team that we started with and the depth that we had and the things that we loved about this group are not necessarily true going into this back half of the season, these last 9 games. So just kind of have perspective, have an understanding of what we're dealing with, and just kind of ride the waves as they come. Know that we're going to probably lose a couple more games. It's probably some frustrating ones. We might go lose at Missouri, but they still have the chance of going out and beating Auburn at home. You know that this team is capable of doing that. They have done that against the best of the best this season. So just kind of take the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs that come with this year and the complexities of this season. Enjoy it. Root for a run. Don't be waiting to point your fingers with "I told you so's." And then just know the long-term journey with this, that high school recruiting, transfer portal recruiting, getting the best of the best there, and retention is going to be this program's footprint. It's going to be their identity, and it's a really promising, enjoyable one. Improve the defense. Let's try to get better than freaking 219 in college, or 218 in college basketball. Let's keep enjoying the number 1 offense in college basketball. Find ways to make stops, keep making shots, and let's go win some basketball games. Steven, any closing thoughts that you have before we get out of here?
Not really. Just if you want to do the "I told you so's," wait until, let's say, at the end of like year 2. If we're dealing with this 365 days from now, at Stephen Peak KSR.
Correct.
Tag me. Tell me I told you so, and that'll be fair. For right now, I have no more words. I can't talk about this game any more than I already have.
This really is enjoyable, though, to like just kill an hour plus of our drive. I mean, when these drives are miserable and we're going to be complaining anyway about like what the game is going to be, we might as well talk about it and have a camera recording while we're sitting here talking. We're doing the exact same thing that we'd be doing if the camera wasn't rolling. So it's a lot more enjoyable to get home by doing it this way. So with that, Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. Club Blue was founded by UK fans strictly to support the NIL efforts at the University of Kentucky. Unlike most collectives, 100% of subscriber money and 100% of donor money goes directly to NIL. Club Blue charges no fees. Club Blue subscribers receive some amazing benefits like invitations, special events, meet and greets with UK athletes, signed merchandise, monthly giveaways, ticket giveaways, Club Blue merch, and more. Subscribe today at www.clubbluenil.com. You get to pick which sport you want to support when you sign up. Choose your sport and support with Club Blue. Also, the best time of the year is here in SEC basketball land, and the best app to bet college basketball, SEC basketball, is Circus Sports Kentucky. It's sports betting the way it should be, with high and transparent betting limits, the lowest holds, and exceptional customer service. It doesn't matter when they take the court, whether it's spreads, props, futures, or in-game. Circus Sports is the place to bet college basketball fun and bet like a pro from anywhere, anytime. Download your new bookie today at circusports.com. Must be 18 or older. For Kentucky Gambling Problem Services, call or text 1-800-426-2537. I felt good. I used my buddies at Circus Sports Kentucky going before we headed down to Oxford, because I did feel that we were going to get a nice bounce back game. I got to recover a little bit. We got Super Bowl coming up this weekend. We got another big Kentucky opportunity that we'll see what the spread looks like. But, hey, if people are doubting the Cats right now, I feel like there's some good time for value. So make sure you capitalize on that. But a lot of fun stuff coming with the Super Bowl, obviously. And then March Madness, SEC tournament. There's going to be a lot of fun, unique props and different things that you could utilize with our friends at Circus Sports Kentucky. So make sure you go hang out with them, hang out with us. It's going to be a grand old time as we wrap up this season and we wrap up this road trip. I'm excited to get home, and I think we won't have very many left of these. I think we have Alabama and Missouri is the last 2 driving road trips. We're going to send somebody else out to Norman to do that. We got Adam Stratton going out there, so he'll be there. Still trying to decide for us on Texas. I have some family down there, so we're trying to decide if I'm flying down. But in terms of actual riding road trips with this, our clock is winding down. Oh, it's gonna be a fun one. Hopefully, it's gonna be a fun one. We need a long
some confetti with me in the car.
We need a long extended stay in Nashville. It's gonna be a grand old time. Thank you for joining. Thanks for being along for the ride with us. As always, make sure you're subscribed to KSR Plus. Make sure you're subscribed right here on the KSR YouTube channel. Make sure you like, comment, all those fun things. I'm sure you guys are bullying us in the chat right now, but hey, guess what? You can't hurt us. We're
bazooka holes through us.
We got bazooka holes. We're already hurting enough from the Ole Miss loss. So hey, what's a YouTube comment or two? Appreciate each and every one of you. Go Cats.